This video provides an overview of what I'll be asking you to do for your final project. Your final project is an opportunity for you to do some investigation and research on your family heritage. I know that many of you have a diverse family heritage and are welcome to choose whichever one most interests you. And sometimes the choice might be determined on which is the easiest to get information from. And in my situation, my mom is the easiest person for me to have gotten information from. And she was born in a small town in Austria. So what I'm going to do is show you my slides of what I'm expecting of you so that you can model them after that. So the first slide you're going to be preparing is going to be a title of your heritage project. You'll notice with my cursor that I have down here that in the notes I tell you specifically always what that slide needs to contain. So slide number 1 is a title of your heritage project, and I would like to have an image in the background that represents that region. The second slide is where you have a sort of expanded map, an overview map of the region that you're, or the country and its location on the globe that you're going to be investigating. So this little blue region right here is the country of Austria in Europe. So you want to have just a sense that people know where in the world it is. And then you will have in the third slide a much more detailed map, and in this map you're discussing the actual region in that country where your dish comes from, which will be in my case a region called Burgenland. For the next several slides, I'd like you to explore the natural environment that your region exemplifies. And so I'd like to have your fourth slide be images, preferably 6 images, so that the audience can get a sense of what that region even looks like. And again, just as a reminder, remember I'm telling you exactly what it is that I'm expecting of those slides in that notes section. And so it should represent pretty much all aspects, or as many aspects of that region as possible. The small town that my mom comes from in Austria has both steppe landscape ecosystems, so that's where you see those green grasslands, but it also has a large lake that is important to that ecosystem. And I decided to really give you a representation of that area to have you see some of the houses and the famous animals that exist in that area. It is known for its storks that sit on the rooftops, on the chimneys, and has many visitors. The next slide is going to have you focus particularly on the flora, that's the plants of that area. And if you can not only create an image of the plants, but also write their scientific names. Again, these should represent those classic regions that you would find in that area where your dish comes from. And the next slide is going to be discussing some of the animals. I am more than happy that you include mushrooms, so fungi can be included. You can include, let's see, if it has any sort of algae that's typical to that area, regardless, as long as it's a good representation. You'll notice that I have both mammals, birds, I also have fish. If you find reptiles or amphibians that you want to include, please do that. Again, at least 5 to 6 images that include both the actual organism and its scientific name. Okay. Slide number 7 will be just introducing the actual ecosystem, what that area is considered to exemplify. So this region in Austria, while most people feel like Austria is nothing but mountains, is actually a very flat region. It's called the steppes of Austria-Hungary. And so You'll notice I have an image of what that region looks like, as well as a short description of what's typical for that region. And in this case, it's not having any trees, lots of grasses, and quite extreme weather. I was not able to get an actual picture of my mom, but that will change. In this slide, you're going to have an image of who the person is that you're interviewing. And in this case, it could be someone who actually passed away and you're having someone, a family member, talk about them, so you can bring in an image of that person from long ago. Perhaps you have decided to make a recipe of a grandfather who always prepared a certain dish, and I invite you to put that image of a grandfather or great grandfather in. It does not have to be a living person, but when you are doing this, be sure that you just identify who that person is in relation to you. Then I will be asking you to do a video. And this should be a linked video, and I shouldn't say video, you should be doing an interview, and this should have a link where you either have a video file, audio file, or a written transcript of the interview you are doing with the person that's going to be discussing that person. It could be the person themselves who's talking about their own life. And again, as I said, you can also more or less research a person that passed away, and you might have a child or grandchild of that person talk about their life, the person. Again, using that example of maybe you are going to specialize on a recipe of a great grandfather who passed away. You can maybe have a grandchild of his be your interviewee, and that you are going to ask them questions. Your interview should give the audience a picture of the culture, traditions, and setting that this recipe is prepared in, personal stories of memories that are associated with food, and any tips that allow the audience to prepare this recipe. And in terms of my interview, this one will be linked later on. My mom is someone who grew up in incredibly poor conditions, where most of the time they did not have enough food to eat. And so the recipe that I will be presenting to you is pretty much what they scavenged and scoured in the land just to be able to make a meal. My next slide is going to be a slide that presents the actual food that you will be preparing with both an image and a name. And in my case, it would be the Apfelstrudel, which is called Apfelstrudel in Austrian. The slide after that is a list of ingredients that are required to prepare that recipe. And then you are going to be asked in the following slide to make a video of how you prepared that recipe. You are, of course, welcome to have the family member you're interviewing or a family member help you with making the recipe. And it should look like a cooking show, so that you are talking to the camera, telling the audience what you're doing, why you're doing it. Be sure you give correct quantities and techniques of how to do it properly. Because of the COVID-19 virus, I am not able to video myself and my mom preparing this. So instead, I have put a video of a YouTube person doing this. Remember, this is you preparing the food, not a YouTube video. I just wanted you to see an example of what to expect. Then after that, I'd like you to take a look at least two scientific processes that exist in the actual preparation or cooking of the meal. I am very happy to meet with you and talk to you about this process. And in fact, we'll have check-in meetings next week individually where I do that with you, just so that you have a sense of the science and I can support you in that. So I've put in the science of two pieces of my recipe and all that. And then lastly, your reference, I just put in a couple of references. I ask that you really reference everything as you should with all things at the very end. Again, this project is an opportunity for you to actually really learn a little bit about your own heritage, but also to show with pride to the rest of us all these amazing parts of your family life, and share a recipe that is really unique to your family. It can be as complicated or simple as possible, but it does have to be authentic. I know that there are recipes, at least in terms of this recipe that my mom makes, where it's a little pinch of that and a little pinch of this, and that's fine also. Just make sure that in your video you show what it is that you're trying to get to. Have fun with it. I look forward to seeing all of them. We're going to be putting them on the discussion board so that everyone has access to them. So during our shelter in place, we at least have an opportunity to try one of your amazing recipes that are unique to your family.